Hello and welcome to all the Hylians out there. I'm Joe, and this one being more focused on the character of Saria. I just figured that what was needed was a character study kind of video, similar to the Malin as the love interest of Link a while back that Dan and I did, but this time just kind of put Saria loosely under the microscope and try to get at what makes this girl so special and what kind of archetype she is. Kind of look at her from maybe a different point of view than I've observed others observing her through. I've noticed a few videos where people propose Saria as a love interest, which that startled me, I'm going to be honest, because she's in the body of a child. I never even considered her as a possible love interest. And then there's also her dialogue and the way she spoke to Link and the way she held herself and her expression at certain moments, so that I just ended up thinking of Saria as a bit more of a maternal figure for Link. She may look like she's about 11 or 10 years old or something, but to me she always seemed maybe not the crone archetype, but almost the mother archetype for Link. Ultimately assumes a very different kind of relationship with him than any other character, male or female, outside maybe the Great Deku Tree, in the whole of Ocarina of Time. And I think it's a testament to the great writing on Nintendo's part that Saria is such a unique character in that she's not at all like the other girls, and that there's not much of a sense of romance between her and Link. And the character, when she's first introduced, is someone you basically run errands for, in that some of the Kokiri are a little jealous of Link's friendship with her. And you then see her next after the Great Deku Tree has fallen, with Saria giving over her ocarina to Link, with Link running off pretty much with tears in his eyes, honestly heartbroken at the separation from her. I have a confession to make. As a child, I really liked the Hercules movie by Disney. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I always really enjoyed it, and found that the scene where it's separating himself from his parents and leaving to go meet Zeus and go off on the quest left a bit of an impact on me, so that I always ended up kind of reminded of that scene with Link leaving Saria, so that I kind of viewed the scenes almost mirror reflections of each other. This mentality, I guess you could say, is one that I was recently told that's not exactly how most people probably look at the scene, although I think that there is something there. And I think that Link found an alternative maternal figure in a way in Navy. Obviously, that's a relationship that's going to have to be examined down the road, beyond just a look and listen jokes. Saria, though, is someone who later on is revealed to be the great sage of the forest, and Kiri, they don't seem at all like Hylians or humans. They're a very otherworldly species. There's something almost eldritch about them in comparison to normal human beings or Hylians. And Saria, far more than any other Kokiri, has this side to her. Saria's song is a very haunting, beautiful melody that seems almost cheerful and something like a guiding mother for you. And this is really a very feminine song, I think. And Saria is a very feminine character in a lot of ways, in all the best ways, so that she's often acting as a guide and as a kind of mentor and almost maternal influence over Link. Now, I know a lot of people might say, well, no, it'd probably be closer to maybe an older sister, which I can understand. I do agree with to an extent, so that I think that there's a valid argument there, and I'm not going to rebuttal that because I don't have an argument against that. I even kind of agree with it. I would just take it further and say that there's something otherworldly and ancient about Saria. A lot of the Kokiri act and behave like children, as is noted throughout the game when you visit the village of the Kokiri. And yet Saria seems to talk, act, and look at Link not like another one of the Kokiri children, but she seems almost like she's second in command to the Great Deku Tree. Almost like a secondary Deku Tree. She is very, very, very different from her friends, from her peers, from her fellow villagers. I'd venture to say she's probably the oldest of the Kokiri. And I'd even venture to say that Saria is probably the most unique, well, obviously because she's the sage of the forest. All of this begs the question of the nature of Kokiri aging, as most are likely centuries old, but they still behave like children, so that their psychological makeup and background seems very different from immortals like, say, from Tolkien's Legendarium in the form of the elves there. Whereas with Saria, it seems like she's the only one who's achieved a kind of psychological adulthood, in marked contrast to everyone else. So that it's really, really interesting. And when one considers that the Kokiri are essentially living in what they imagine to be a forest utopia, cut off and isolated from the outside world, where there is very little evil happening within the village of the Kokiri. It's probably how people imagine the Shire to be in Lord of the Rings, although there are dystopian elements to the Shire, in marked contrast to the village of the Kokiri, which is just simply a village of children, more like Peter Pan's Lost Boys. And there are nods to the Lost Boys. I mean, there's the Lost Forest, there's the fact that they're all kids and they don't age, and that they all generally follow their mother figure, Wendy/Saria. The difference is there's no real Peter Pan character, except if you consider maybe Link to an extent. But like, say, Peter Pan from the Hook movie, Link has to, as an adult, when he pulls the sword out, come to the rescue of these lost boys and lost girls, rescuing these children from the monsters that Ganon sicked on them. This also brings up the question of, what are the Kokiri? In a later game, Wind Waker, they evolved into a kind of weird tree-like creatures, so that you're left wondering, are they an extension of the forest? Are they forest spirits? Are they like I believe they're called kendamas from Mononoke Hime, where these are signs that the forest is healthy? I would venture to say that given Japanese mythology and way the Kokiri seem to interact with the forest, that is to say that they are an embodiment of the good health of the forest, but that as the forest changes in character and nature, so too will the Kokiri, which begs the question, are they really immortal as we understand them, or are they merely an extension of forest and the Great Deku Tree in a way? As you can see, there's a lot of questions that I have about the nature of the Kokiri, and metaphysically they're probably just an extension and an expression of the forest itself and its will. At least that's how I kind of look at them. But I also look at them as the spirit of innocence, in a way, put in multiple bodies, or at least there are multiple spirits of innocence, as they are unaware of the greater world, and thus innocent of all the sins and crimes that pervade the world and whatnot. How does this pertain to Saria? If I had to make a guess, I'd say that she's the female spirit of the forest, so to speak. She's the divine feminine within the forest, a kind of Demeter-type figure, or Persephone, minus the death part. She is a marked contrast to the Great Deku Tree, who takes on a role akin to a mixture between Njord and Freyr from Norse mythology, that is to say, a father forest type of figure, while Saria assumes a more mother forest type of character. She's the personification of the feminine in the forest, or the wild, which is to say the nurturing mother of the world, though one that is completely innocent in a way of Persephone, and thus Saria's quite a bit different in some ways, and very unique. She's a bit also like, I guess, Artemis from Greek mythology. But as more is that, it's almost as though she is filled with foresight, so that I wonder how much of the events that take place in Ocarina of Time really surprise her. What is more is that where the Kokiri are often prone to playing, Saria doesn't really do that. Sure, she plays on her ocarina, but she's someone who does everything for a purpose or with a certain reason to it. And she ends up acting as a guiding force for Link, for her song and through just her overall influence. I'd argue that of the Kokiri that Link probably goes on to miss the most, it might be Saria. Saria truly looked out for him and cared for him, and I had the impression she raised him right alongside the Great Deku Tree. And I think that maybe it would have been a better place to position this video maybe later in maybe June on Mother's Day, but maybe I'll make a separate video for that, because why not? I just wanted to give kudos to Saria, the greatest of the Kokiri, and also comment on how she seems like she's a mixture of the crone daughter archetypes all rolled into one, and that doubtless she goes on to serve a very long career as Sage of the Forest. So give it up for Saria, and don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button as though you were Link taking down Ganon.